does President Trump go back to his base and talk about the fact that the nuclear weapon question is being pushed further? They're talking. There's no talks about Iran's new missile program. That was one of the core objectives of this campaign. Now, in fact, we're talking about a $300 billion slush fund, an investment program that's being talked about. This is according to the reportage by New York Times. How do you go back? This appears way worse than Obama's JCPOA.
Well, of course, you're right. But keep in mind that the vast majority of Americans, and we have to understand that President Trump's so-called base is shrinking quickly. It's not very large anymore. It's not more than a third of the popular vote that it once was. It's much lower than that. It's probably down around 20%, if that. And so given that, keep in mind that the vast majority of Americans really are not interested in what's happening in the Persian Gulf. Now, they're going to become very interested in the near future as the consequences of our actions begin to have an impact here in the United States. We could talk a little bit about that because we've had very prominent people in the oil and gas sector tell us flat out, depending upon who you want to listen to, the executive vice president of Exxon or any number of oil and financial analysts say that somewhere between 3 weeks and 8 weeks from now, the strategic petroleum reserve is exhausted and we're in serious trouble here in the United States. Nobody bothered to point out to President Trump, for instance, that California is very dependent on imports of oil from the Persian Gulf. So now we've discovered all those things. So for President Trump, it's not really as big of a problem as you may think. I'm sure his political advisors have told him, look, the average American doesn't care. He wants this to be over with. If President Trump went public tomorrow morning and said, I've had a conversation with everyone, it makes no sense to continue this. All of our friends in Asia, all of our friends in the Middle East, all of our friends in Africa and Europe have all said the same thing. So I'm suspending these military operations immediately. The most important thing is to resume traffic through the Persian Gulf. Everybody would say, fine, not a problem, thanks very much, and go on with their lives. Israel won't. And Israel's agents in the United States who are billionaires and who represent enormous quantities of money are in a position to tell the president, look, if you do this, we will no longer support you. If you don't have us as your protection, as your insurance policy, it's open season on you, Donald Trump, on the Hill. Your enemies are going to come out and they're going to go after you. And the only thing that stands between them and you right now is us. We support you. And we control the media. We control finance. And those are the best things to control if you're interested in political power. So what are you going to do, Mr. President? And I think right now, Mr. President is going back to Mr. Netanyahu and telling him, look, this is what I think we can do. And he's trying to make the argument to Netanyahu that he should come along. But Mr. Netanyahu's calculus is completely unrelated to Trump's. He sees himself in a unique position. He has absolute power right now over the United States Armed Forces and the policymaking machinery in Washington. Why would he give that up? No, what he wants is a resumption of the war. He wants to press this war with the goal of destroying Iran. He wants to make Iran an object lesson for everyone in the region. If you oppose Israel, this is what happens to you. And of course, we've had people in the open, members of the government, this Gavir and Smotrich and others, they're talking about a future war with Turkey, with the Turks, who are next on the menu because they're obviously hostile to Israel. This has become a sort of perpetual war for the protection of Israel in an environment that Israel created for itself. So that's President Trump's real dilemma. Can he divorce himself and simply say, that's it, I've gone as far as I can, this must stop? Thus far, we've seen no evidence that he can do that.
Yeah, two points in what you just said over here. First, about the strategic petroleum reserves and gas prices in America. I mean, the fact that there's probably a crisis level will reach by July over here, and gas is also at an all-time high. Inflation is at an all-time high in America. I read a report that it's at a 3-year high as well. So that's one aspect you're talking about. The second